special welcome to our esteemed panelists. We have on our panel Mrs. Meenakshi Chauhan Bakhani, Principal GD Goenka Public School, Vasant Kunj, Mrs. Charlotte, Chief Learning Officer, the Queen's English. I hope I got your name correctly pronounced, ma'am. Mr. Rajinder Shah, Vice President, Shri Educare Limited. Ms. Piyu Mukherjee, a parent of teenage children on the threshold of choosing a life path. Mr. Sayuj Golcha, a young entrepreneur. Mr. Digvijay Singh, a student participant. It is my pleasure now to introduce our Academic and Operation Director, Ms. Anuradha Sinha. So I would like to share my screen with you. So she's been associated with the field of education for over 3 decades. During this period, she has worn several hats, that of a teacher, administrator, researcher, curriculum designer, trainer, parent coach, and career counselor. She has a keen interest in understanding and finding solutions to the problems faced by students, teachers, and parents, and help each one of them succeed in their educational and professional journey. She's the guiding force behind our program, and she has taken care that she wishes to make Millennium the number one choice as a second school for every child in the country. Not taking any more of your valuable time, I would like to hand over the meeting to Mrs. Anuradha Sinha for further proceedings of the webinar.
Thank you, Vandana. Yeah, indeed, I am also excited with the super panel that we have and looking forward to having some great discussions and hearing the viewpoints of different people in this webinar. Now we are talking about the future, the jobs of the future. Actually, nobody knows about it. So about a few years ago, when we were growing up, that time, getting into a good college was the dream, because that would mean getting a good job. And that dream would often lead us to study and study and study, right? So, but that I think is passé now. And it worked for some time, and still some people think that it is going to work, but definitely it doesn't work now. And children today are definitely looking for a job. They are looking for a high paid job, but they are looking for something which they love to do. And when they do something which they love to do, they definitely get paid for it very well also. So now let's talk about what are the kind of future jobs. Do we know about them really? Okay, so just a moment. I'll share my screen, just a moment. So when we talk about the jobs of the future, we are talking about, so we say we are hiring. What do we need? Ethical sourcing officer, cyber calamity forecaster, chief trust officer, digital talker, okay, man-machine teaming manager, genomic portfolio director, cyber city analyst, walker talker. When I read about these jobs, so somebody has written an article, very beautiful article about what this person imagines these jobs to be. And he thinks that these are the jobs of the future, but it's all based on our imagination and our understanding of what's happening now. But definitely the jobs which we are talking of today are not going to interest our students. So then what is our understanding is that these jobs mostly look like jobs which are digitally inclined, because automation and AI has actually brought about a revolution, and they are all digitally inclined. So to say now do everything digitally and that digital learning is the key, I somehow beg to differ over here. What I mean to say, those skills, our children, the ones who are in our schools now, are all digital natives. So we actually don't have to do much with them. Yeah. So what is it that we have to give them that they survive any kind of job in the future? So actually being human, do you have the skills? If you want to have the skills of a cyber security forecaster, or the jobs that I said before, those jobs, I think you could do a 2 weeks, 3 weeks, max 3 months course, and you would be at it because you know how to do it and you are digitally very inclined. But if you haven't built on your other skills, that you can't do a crash course on. You can't develop empathy, you can't develop your speaking skills, you can't learn to manage your time, you can't learn to set goals right, you can't learn to not procrastinate, being consistent, you can't learn to stop whining for everything that comes your way. Confidence, you have to know what makes you happy. So these are some of the skills which actually make you do anything else. So I think apart from digital literacy, which is essential and which, whether we do it or not, these kids do it themselves. But these are some things very consciously we need to start putting in our children right at the very early age. So my aim today is to have this. We have two distinguished educationists. We have very, very distinguished parent also. I would say she is herself a big high professional, and here we have called her as a parent because she has also worn several hats. So she would be a good one to talk about it. Ms. Piyo Mukherjee, we have a student who is just passing out. We have somebody who has just passed out from college 2 years ago and is an entrepreneur. So let's hear from them how important these skills are and how we can build it. So the format of the webinar will be, I will be taking up a few questions, a few skills that we at Millennium One has identified as key skills which need to be developed in children, and I would ask panelists one by one to speak about it. Yeah. So let me begin with our very first panelist, Miss Meenakshi Bakuni. So with over 30 years of experience in school education, with a rich experience of working with some of the best schools like DPS Noida, Heritage School Gurgaon, Shri Ram School, Amity International School, and Springdale School, Miss Bakuni has dedicated her life to the all-round development of children. I think this is just talking about the places she has worked, but how she works and the passion she holds is not written. I asked her to write something about her, and this is what she gave me. And I can really talk much more about Mrs. Bakuni. I've seen her work. She really means and she tries to bring out the best in students. So she has truly dedicated her life to the all-round development of children. Ms. Bakuni, my question to you is, a lot is being talked about leadership skills. Now, who is a leader? Is the leader the person who stands in front and speaks? Is the politician is the leader? And no, then who's a leader? What do we mean by leadership skills? And how important is it to develop that in our children? How early should we develop it? And do we actually do it? So a lot of questions about that, Ms. Bakuni, over to you.
Thank you, Anuradha. Most importantly, I would say I'm presently with GD Goenka. I've been there for about last 12 years now with the GD Goenka group. So I want to acknowledge that here first. Who's a leader? I think anybody who can influence the thought, the action, the behavior of a larger group, larger than oneself, beyond oneself, is a leader. So, you don't need a huge team. You could be a leader maybe only for 2 people, 3 people. It's okay. So long as you have some kind of a positive influence, I would rather concentrate on the positive part of it. The leadership would also be negative. So anybody who could influence your thought, somebody who could influence your behavior, your actions is a leader. Now, what does it take to come into that space? A lot of qualities. A leader, definitely, because one has to connect with the people, must have excellent communication skill. And then when I talk about communication, excellent communication, there are so many sub-levels of it. You have articulation, you have vocabulary, you have so many things to go with it. And then, of course, you have the sensitivity, the way, how do you connect to a person? How I connect to a child of class 2 may not be the same as I would connect, the skills that I might use to connect with a child of class 12 or a peer, my colleague. If I have to talk to any of these different groups, I need to articulate differently. It cannot be the same. So when I talk about communication, it has so many sub-levels, and they need to be taken care of. Ability to connect with people. And as you said, one has to be a humane person. So you need to have the sensitivity, the empathy, to be able to put yourself in the shoes of the others, to be able to connect, because without a connection, there's no leader. Otherwise, you can have bosses, you can have forced leadership. And you talked about politics. I shouldn't be saying it, but we have plenty of cases around where people have been kind of put in a certain position. They've been placed there, but are totally ineffective. So I'll get to that a little later. So what you're asking me to do, I'm going to talk in terms of what leadership entails in terms of skills, and then what leadership is not. That is much more important to understand. What it is very wide, but what it is not and is construed as one, that needs to be simplified here and clarified here. So I think, a leader is somebody who can see the larger picture and can understand that the larger picture is not the leader oneself, but one requires the whole team. And the leader is a part of it. So leader becomes a facilitator. So if I'm a school leader, I'm a facilitator. I'm not there to usurp all the facilities and all the resources that are there. This is a fallacy that very often happens, that, a leader believes that I have this position, I have these resources, so they're here for me to utilize. And this is, I think, one of the biggest fallacies about leadership. Leadership is about enabling others, helping others grow, taking the entire team together to be able to see a larger picture. So, we have had, I'll again go to the politics, because that's a very evident and clear leadership that everybody has seen and can see. We've had so many leaders who've thought about the country, as one unit, because our country is so varied and so pluralistic. So there've been people who've been able to look at the larger picture, and yet we also have leaders who only look at the small bits. Would only think about maybe Tamil Nadu and then maybe Bengal and maybe Maharashtra, and is not looking. The leaders not looking at the larger picture. So such leaders you would see don't even make it to the center. They stay where they are. So leadership is about looking at the larger picture. They have the ability to plan, to execute. That's very, very important. That you have so many resources, and the biggest and the cheapest resource is time. So you have time, you have money, you have other resources available to you, and you have to carry out a project. So how do you plan and how do you execute it most optimally? Which means utilizing all the resources to the best possible, in the best possible manner. So right person for the right job. Sequencing the events, whatever are the sub-events for any project, in a correct manner so that the least time is wasted. Japanese have mastered this skill. I was reading somewhere, that they have this technique that in case you're moving in a certain direction, so you finish all the tasks of that place and then come back. So that way you've saved your time. Otherwise, supposing I have to dress up and I have my shirt inside and pants inside and then everything else. So I go put on my shirt, come out. Go next time, put on my trousers, come out. So I'm wasting my time, my energy. So leader is very conscious about the optimal utilization of all resources, whether it is manpower, whether it is time, whether it's money or anything else. So that's one thing that leader is. Leader always goes beyond oneself. So one is never thinking about a right kind of a leader I'm talking about. Leader doesn't think about one's own benefits, one's own desires or growth. Leader thinks about the entire group. Then the person is a leader. Otherwise, the person is not a leader. The leader, as I said earlier, is very sensitive to the needs of the team members. What comes to me as very crucial to leadership is something that I learned when I was a child through a prayer that my principal used to speak. He would say, "Oh Lord, give me the courage to change what I cannot, the strength to tolerate what I can't. Give me the courage to change the things that I can, the strength to bear the things I cannot, and the wisdom to make the difference between the two." This to my mind, this completely sums up leadership, because you need to have lots of courage and confidence, and particularly in the hour of adversity. So you need to have courage. You need to have your conviction, because it's you who's going to be driving the entire team to give their best. A leader definitely cannot be a weak link in the entire chain. So courage, conviction, to my mind, are some of the most crucial properties or qualities of a leader. Now, you asked me a question whether all these skills should be there in everyone. Definitely, definitely. I mean, who would want a member of a team who does not have good communication skill? Who would want a member of a team who cannot plan and execute? And let's look at this also in a sense that, if you look at a big organization, say if I look at, all of us are coming from the space of school. So I may be the leader of the school in the sense that I'm the principal, I'm sitting at the top. But then it's further subdivided into various wings and various departments of subject, academic subjects and otherwise. So each one has got some or the other leader leading that smaller team. So if I say that all the qualities should be there only in the principal and nothing below that, so what are we talking about? So the qualities that are there in me are to be replicated. I mean, I say me, I mean the principal, need to be replicated in the HOD, need to be replicated into the wing coordinator, need to be replicated down the channel into various subheads. So needless to say, it's absolutely pointless to even believe that these qualities are only required in a leader. All these qualities are required in every person, because each person by destiny, by default, might have a certain area of influence where these skills are to be utilized. So wherever these skills are to be utilized, they are universal. They need, I mean, who would want a non-courageous person as a part of the team? Nobody. I mean, army, for example, works as a huge unit. There are leaders at every level. So the country level, the sector level and whatnot. So everywhere the qualities are the same. They are required here or there, wherever. What leadership is not is what I want to focus on. When you look around, I want you to just be with me for a while and just think about it. When you look at various kinds of leaders, say politics is one case I would make again, where you would find plenty of people who've been planted at a certain position. Or maybe if you have jobs and you can see certain bosses, who get that leadership role because they've been posted at a certain place. So these are things that are coming per force. A person is placed in a position of leadership and has to operate like one. Now, if the person has the skill set, good for everyone. But what if a person doesn't have? We have plenty of such cases all around us. We have such cases in politics. When we talk about the failed leadership, we have such cases in every organization. You talk about the top or you talk about the subunits where the leadership fails. So just because you are in a position does not really make you a leader. It is the sum total of all the qualities that you have and how you put those qualities into practice. That's very important. If you don't put your qualities into practice, these are wasted qualities. So here I come to another very important aspect about leadership, that a leader has to be somebody who's ready to come out of the comfort zone just like that. If required, I can't say that I've only slept maybe 2 hours in last 48 hours. No, if it is required, I have to get into action. So leadership, and it's not just the physical comfort I'm talking about, even the mental comfort. We have to be ready to be learning. So whether we talk about getting out of comfort zone physically, or we talk about this mentally, emotionally, whichever way, leader is always ready for a change. Leader is very apt at adapting oneself and thereby causing the adaptation for the entire team. I mean, we've just faced the COVID situation. Overnight, entire system of schooling changed. I mean, this is kudos to the leadership at every level, not just the principal, the vice principal, the HODs, the wing in charges, the teachers, the subject teachers, everybody was up and getting trained into all the platforms. I mean, we could have never imagined this kind of a webinar a year back. And we are now so adapted it. So this is what leadership is all about. And this is when leadership becomes pervasive. It is existing at all levels, and schools are a beautiful example of this. You will find every teacher quite a leader in one's own right. So that's another thing. I want to bring your notice to your notice a certain kind of leadership that I've seen a lot in my experience, and I'm sure all of you must have. This is a leadership that comes out of reflection, in the sense that when you are associated with a powerful person, you would very often see this again in politics. It's very easy to see even in organizations. You would find certain people who would like to be very close to the person in power. So whether it's a politician who has so many of the followers around, or you have the the divine gurus that we have, the spiritual gurus, and they are followed by so many, the coterie of followers. And these people who are close to the leader by default, become very powerful, in perception of the others. But are they good leaders? No, not really. They, in fact, make the leader very ineffective. So that's something that I want to draw your attention to, that a leader has to be very conscious about the people around him or her. If these are the kind of people who are kind of there to just please him and say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, then they are actually going to be harming him or her. So that's another very important quality of a leader, that the leader has to keep a watch in the very, very close circuit and make sure that his or her leadership is not diluted by people around, because they are trying to, project themselves as leaders at the cost of the bigger team, at the cost of the bigger picture. So that's a very, very important thing. So then, if leadership does not come to you because of the position, if leadership does not come to you because of the association of being close to the leader, then who really is a leader? Leader is somebody who evolves out of the system slowly and gradually, comes to the surface because of his actions, because of his reliability, because of the fact that anything, specifically given to the person is able to execute to the best of the ability and is reliable in every sense. In the sense, in case something goes wrong, the person will be the first one to come and report. So is truthful, has the courage to come and admit the mistake. Such people slowly and gradually, with all the qualities that I said earlier, that people have courage, to accept mistakes, to come out in the, they're ready to get out of the comfort zone. They're ready to accept the mistakes and take the responsibility of what goes wrong in a team. And at the same time, when there are glories to be given to the team, they're ready to share it with everybody else. You would see so many people, as you said earlier, Anuradha ma'am, that there are people who like to be. It's believed that leadership is like being in the front. You're there in every photograph. You're there, taking to the mic every time. No, these are not leaders. These are projections of what is construed as leadership, what is believed as leadership. Leader is generally not seen. I was reading long time back somewhere, बहुत पहले मैंने एक article पढ़ा था. A right kind of leader is one who is ready to make him or herself redundant in the organization. I mean, I'm substituting the word manager with leader here. The title was that the right kind of manager is one who's working towards making himself more redundant. So if I'm a leader, just because I'm taking rounds at the school and I'm effective, then I'm not a leader. I would be a right kind of a leader if whether I'm there or not, the system works. So that's another quality of a leader. To be able to create such systems that make the leader oneself very redundant. So that means the leader has to be not in a space of insecurity. Leader has to be a person who walks his talk. You talked about that career as walker-talker. And I was just thinking about that. Every leader is a walker-talker because you have whatever you're saying. If I talk about lesser use of plastic and I keep using it, if I talk about non-consumerism and every time I go buying and I come back having bought 10 saris and 12 pairs of sandals, then I'm not walking my talk. And very soon people will see through that and will not accept me as a leader. So I was just saying that to my mind, if I have to sum up leadership, leadership has to be about a journey within and not outside. It has to be a journey that makes you stronger from within. That means your courage, your trustworthiness, your ability to trust people. This is what clearly distinguishes a leader from the other. And just one last point, I will take just one more minute, Anuradha ma'am, because that's a very important thing you had asked me.
Yes, sir.
Whether this can be inculcated, developed. Yes, it can be inculcated, it can be developed because seeds are there in every child. The parents, if they're listening here, they have to ensure that they allow their children to make mistakes as they grow along. They allow them to take decisions, even about petty things like मुझे अभी खाना खाना है कि नहीं खाना है. If a child says खाना नहीं खाना है, भूख नहीं है, नहीं lunch time है, you have to have food now. Look at the time. You can't talk like that. So we can't expect children to be very subservient and very obedient in the school space, and they go outside and they can take courageous steps. It just doesn't happen. You have to give them that space in their comfort zone, which is home first, classroom next, and then all will be fine. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. It was such relevant points. Yes, I have some things in the chat box also I would like to read. Ms. Anuradha Kohli writes that if you allow me to define a leader, it's a thinker, a believer, a selfless team player. This is, in my opinion, defines a leader. Yeah,
Very
so you
good.
said that actually. So you said that a leader is somebody who manages resources well. It could be all kinds of resources, time management, courage and conviction. Yeah, to be able to take along the team. Yep, and walk the talk. Yeah, so a leader is that, and the most important and the beautiful part is it can be developed, it can be inculcated. So it is not that nobody is born like that, right? So it can be done, and everybody needs to be a leader, because whatever resources I have, I need to manage that. I might not be able to, I may not be having a team with me, but even if when I'm working the resource, I need to manage my time to do well, even if I'm studying. So these are some skills which have to be developed, and they come under the category of leadership skills. And let me share. Thank you, Pakuni ma'am. Thank you so much for that. So when we say that leader, should it be taught, and should it be not taught, teaching is not the right word for it, should it be inculcated? So we thought that if we have children coming from different, what happens when children are studying in a particular school? There are some fixed leaders in the school, as in when I'm talking about students. So we have some students who are like, they're very good, they speak well, they come up to the stage all the time, and they are comparing, and they, so there could be a handful of students who are doing that, and the others keep feeling that maybe I'm not good enough. So because somewhere the child has started feeling that I can't do it, I'm shy, I'm inhibited. So what we thought, that if we have children coming from diverse backgrounds and onto an online platform where you don't know, and you have another chance to build up these skills and work on a real-time project, work in groups, which is like completely unknown, because the real world is going to be a world where you will be facing different kinds of people. Participate in competitions over here and hone your leadership skills. So, and the skills that you spoke about, ma'am, are actually the most relevant skills about managing time, setting goal, walking with the sort of the end in mind, and things like that. So moving on, thank you very much for that. I think it's an important thing. Our next speaker is Mr. Rajinder Shah, and passionate about teaching and learning of physics. Mr. Rajinder Shah is the recipient of the Best Physics Teacher Award from Stanford University, USA for 2 consecutive years. Mr. Shah's teaching methodology and innovative methods of building an outstanding team of educators helped him to carve out a niche for himself at DPS Vasant Kunj and then at GD Goenka Vasant Kunj. He truly believes that young minds should be given the creative freedom to explore their true potential. He keeps himself up to date with constantly changing world scenario. He is currently the Vice President at Sri Educare Limited. Welcome, Mr. Shah, and such a prolific teacher, and now in a good leadership role. I'm sure you are impacting a lot of students. The first thing about leadership which Mrs. Bakuni spoke about was communication skills. So my question to you is, how important is communication skill? Is of course important. Let's talk about speaking as a skill, and then listening also. So speaking has many connotations, like she also spoke about articulating your thought and speaking up for the right, speaking the right things, speaking with confidence. All of this actually is a great skill which each one of us have to develop. And how can we do it in while the child is still in school, because once the child leaves school, he actually struggles. They all manage it, definitely, but if you have learned the basics when you are in school, you are always the front runner. And so over to you, Mr. Shah, and could you throw some light about the importance of speaking skills?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Anuradha, ma'am. Good evening and namaste to all my co-panelists, audience, and other distinguished members. I'm happy to meet Digvijay, our young friend, right? I have heard about him, and I like the colorful hair, Digvijay. So congratulations for that. Good, good. So coming back to the topic, I completely concur with what ma'am said, that communication is an essential part of any leadership growth. Let me put it this way. While the ongoing pandemic is synonymous with death, hardship, and deprivation caused to a lot of people of this planet, but these last 500 days or so have also taught us many critical lessons. One of them is that even though we're all cooped up in our homes, still we are in touch with each other and a large chunk of business, and the life carried on. Now, question is, how did it happen? Nobody would have imagined that life will come to a standstill like this. But we the humans, the resilient humans, essentially brought life back on track, primarily because individuals collaborated, they coordinated, and they communicated with each other. The young children, let me tell you that we are operating in a dynamic and uncertain environment. And the degree of uncertainty and what I call unknown unknowns, yes, unknown unknowns, is going to escalate and soar in future also. We definitely need to empower our younger generation to lead and learn critical skills and be future ready. We have come to an age when only a degree and a handful of certificates, they are not enough to outshine the competition. We definitely need to have the training on areas like communication skills, worldview development. It has become very essential now. Our young learners must be provided, training on often overlooked areas like public speaking, interpersonal skills, decision-making skill, life management skills. Ma'am also talked about it. This way, we'll be able to develop content and creativity in our young students. Effective communication, according to me, is being widely recognized to be the power that perhaps will fuel the future, global digital economy, and has gained a very, very even strategic importance also. How many times have we heard children telling us, I know what I want to say, but I don't know how to say it. So most of the Indian students perhaps lack that confidence and social skills, particularly from small cities and rural areas. They are sometimes afraid to even ask questions in the class and participate, in competitions. Anuradha ma'am also talked about it. And these days, children are also very comfortable texting and using technology than speaking perhaps face to face. Now, one of the major reasons is the absence of this personality development training in school curriculum. We expect our children to be confident without perhaps providing them the confidence building classes. We as parents want our children to win debates and other public speaking contests without training them on content development and presentation skills. I believe that it's time that we educationists around the world realize that we must work on the holistic development of the students, providing them platforms. Our student, they grow up in a protected and safe cocoons of comfort, and most urban schools I'm talking about provide a very zone of safety and so to say the state-of-art facilities. It's also crucial for them to develop a social connect outside the environment of their school buildings too. A sense of empathy, awareness towards social, economic, and ecological issues is the need of the hour. I believe the extension and expansion of all-round educational experience is what life education explores. Another dimension related to this and is that in the coming years, people will not only have to communicate with each other, but also with the digital device. And we're already doing that. For example, that Siri, Cortana, Alexa, etc. So it's also critical that we ensure that our classroom transactions take cognizance of this and prepare plans, work out strategies for empowering students with the ability to perhaps direct, manipulate, and create intuitive language experiences with digital media. A structured training also in the non-verbal communications like eye contact, the body language, the voice tonality, being proactive, etc., must be part of any curriculum now than ever before needed. We must also train our learners about the allied value skill sets of patience and empathy, active listening. I believe this is a which I reckon is essential to any communication structure. Our government is also in the NEP 2020 suggested a very flexible course structuring, focusing on the multitasking, multi-skilling, and niche courses for building competency among students for future readiness. Now, it is up to us as educators, school leaders, and facilitators to ensure that these policies do not remain on paper only and are implemented in both letter and spirit. And lastly, and I feel very, very close. I feel that this is very close to my heart, right? While we must prepare children, ma'am also talked about it, that while we must prepare children for achieving their goals and aspirations in life, we must also prepare them for hardships, uncertainties, and failures too. It's critical that we give them much importance to failing as we do to winning, with an understanding that failure is not always opposite to success, but perhaps a component of it. Emphasis should be that the acronym for the FAIL is first attempt in learning. First attempt in learning. We as adults tell our children about people who failed but still went on to become creators and inventors. We need to have the children being the creators rather than the consumers of the content. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shah. So, yeah, you rightly said that communication skill is the key, and not only the communication of the words that we speak, but you also spoke about the non-verbal communication that is extremely important, because I have to learn all that. It is what to speak, how to speak, when to speak, and how well to speak. Yeah. So that all that has to be done. But one very important point which came, and which is really what I feel, that yes, we all know that it should be done, and you spoke very rightly that we somehow fail to provide that. We say it's like, I can teach you how to drive a car by showing you the model and making you sit in the car for a day and showing you that this is the steering wheel and this is the clutch and the brake and the everything, and I can just take you around. And then you can't say that I know how to drive a car. But you can say I can drive a car, I passed the driving test, but I can't really drive because I'm scared to drive. Yeah? So it's exactly like that. So what happens that we do teach everything to our children. All our English classes, we have so many English classes in school. Yeah. And they do their language and the grammar and they pass all their tests. Yeah. And we have all the 4 skills there. But they are hesitant to speak, because if you don't speak, you can't speak. The bottom line is that, like you said, that you want our children to be debaters, but do they get the opportunity to debate? So when it comes to debating, we have those handful who always participate in the debate because the others don't come up, or somehow we are so hard crunched for time in the system that we fail to do that. So slowly things are changing. I think schools are realizing these things, and it's coming up to the forefront that every child should get the exposure, because it's very important. It's not necessary that every child has to be a debater and has to do something with that speaking skill in life. But even if you were doing anything, I'm talking over here, I need those skills. I want to sell something, I need those communication skills. Okay. If I am a doctor, I need to communicate with my patient in a good manner. So everywhere communication skill is important. Sometimes you have to argue, sometimes you have to be assertive, sometimes you have to be a debate on it. So yeah. So providing an opportunity is a very key thing, and schools are doing that. And this is what came to our mind when we started at Millennium One also, that do we give them opportunities? So we tied up with some international organizations. One, Ms. Charlotte will come in next, who will speak about the importance of having correct English. And two, we'll have we have tied up with International Toastmasters for Gavel's Club, which is the students' club, who will actually help them build their communication skills and give them opportunities to speak. Mr. Shah, you also spoke about listening. Yeah, listening as a skill, and it is very important, right? So it brings me to a little story which I had read about Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela, he was a son of a tribal chief, right? And he said, when asked, "What did you learn from your father?" What he said was, "I would go out with my father and sit there, and one thing I learned, that they used to all sit in a circle, so that everybody was, there is nobody, one person here and there is a crowd in front or people. So everybody is equal." That is one thing. And the second thing he said, that his father was a chief, but he never was the first one to talk. Okay. So he said that my father wouldn't speak, and he would speak only at the end. And that was a huge life lesson learned, that be the last one to speak. Okay, because you get everybody's viewpoint, you listen to everybody, you should have the patience to wait for your turn to listen to everybody and then come up with something. So everybody can't be the last to speak, because somebody has to speak first. but generally what happens in the classroom, if you want children to answer, people start jumping, and they are jumping to be the first to answer. So that is their enthusiasm, no doubt. Okay, but that should not become from the part of the teachers and leaders and educators. We should make them feel that it doesn't mean that the rest, the people who are not answering, don't know about it. Okay, so give everybody a chance. So listening is also a great art, and speaking and listening go hand in hand. Thank you, Mr. Shah. Thank you so much for that. Our next panelist is Miss Charlotte, and she is from, so speaking skills, like I already said, that we actually want to do that in our children. So Charlotte is a chief learning officer in the Queen's English, an edtech company. She co-founded a high school in central London and set up Oasis Academy South Bank. She completed her teacher's training through Teach for India's UK equivalent, Teach First, and worked for the organization before setting up Oasis Academy South Bank. She's passionate about teaching English, employability, and changing the life chances of young people through education. Passionate about teaching English, she works towards employability and carving the future of young people through education. Welcome, Ms. Charlotte. Welcome to the panel. And she belongs to UK, but she just told us that she is currently in Mozambique. She's joined us from there. Thank you so much for that. My question to you is today, how important is it to speak the language correctly? So whichever language person speaks, how important is it? And can it be learned even if I have got it all wrong now?
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's amazing to be part of such a well-educated panel. It's amazing. The pressure is obviously on for me, because we're talking about mastery, and I'm speaking about mastery of spoken English, and being what looks like the only native English speaker here, the pressure is certainly on for me to speak correct English. I will do my best. Yeah, it's a really, really interesting topic. Mastery, I want to speak from the perspective of English because that's what my background is. That's the company that I work for. And it's also a really pressing, urgent issue in India today. When we look at the statistics, something like 650 million young people in India can't speak English. And when we think about English language and the importance of that common language and the language that will provide a transformation of life chances for young people, it will provide a opportunity to change their trajectory by and improving their employability. It's so important that we address this issue in India. You know, when you're looking at only 4% of a population being able to speak fluent English, this is a language of future jobs. If you can't speak fluent English, if you can't be a confident and fluent English speaker, you're not going to be able to learn to code, for example. You're not going to be able to work in sales or services. You're not going to be able to emigrate, for example. So learning English is vitally important. And when we look at the statistics, we're clearly not getting it right currently. The number of young people, particularly, who are not able to be fluent, confident English speakers would suggest that English language acquisition is not being taught either effectively or correctly. And I think when we look at the current provision of English teaching, particularly in India, because that's the context that we're talking within, a lot of places will be using largely outdated methods. So when we're talking about language acquisition, when you learnt, for example, your mother tongue, or when I learnt my mother tongue of English, let's take my mother tongue as an example. My parents, who were the expert speakers in my life at home, they weren't sitting with me in the kitchen and saying to me, good morning, Charlotte. Today we're going to look at prepositions and conjunctions. And then they would talk to me for an hour about conjunctions and prepositions. That's not how I learned language. It's not how I learned my mother tongue. What happened to me in my kitchen at home was my mother would be speaking to me as an expert speaker. She would be using a multitude of grammatical concepts, and I was hearing those modeled expertly by my mother. I would then repeat what she would say, or I would hear something and I would practice myself speaking those sentences. My mother would correct me. And so she wouldn't have a discrete hour with me explaining something to me. I would hear an expert model a correct answer in fully formed sentences. I would then have an opportunity to practice that. And then I would be given live corrections. And then I was expected to correct my answer immediately. That is how we acquire our native language. That's how we learn and we acquire our own language. So we really need to rethink how we are teaching a foreign language in schools. We need to completely rethink the way that we're doing it, because we're using, in my opinion, we're using outdated methods, and we're not using the most effective way of teaching young people how to speak an additional language. We need to do multiple things to ensure that our young people are becoming fluent and confident English speakers. We need to teach language through example and not through theory. We need to begin by, as I've said before, modeling correct answers, modeling perfect pronunciation, modeling grammatical concepts. We need to have experts modeling that and then give children the opportunity to practice, or not even children, just non-English speakers. We have to give them the opportunity to then practice, but then also give them live feedback and the opportunity to correct first thing. So that would be my first part. So we're doing in that way. We also need to design curricula that are scientific. We need to use modern science, which looks at how the brain works, how memory works. When we are trying to memorize something, we need to use a scientific approach. We need to adopt things like spaced repetition. Spaced repetition, where you hear something for the first time, you will not remember that thing the first time you hear it. The memory of that will diminish over time unless it's brought back to your mind. So unless you get a repetition or that content is repeated again at a later date, it will bring it back to the forefront of your mind. And then again, as time goes and you don't hear it again, the memory of it diminishes, and then you bring it back. And so then you commit things from your working memory to your long-term memory. So we have to look at the science of how you memorize things, how you guarantee memorization. And that's through something like spaced repetition. We also can't teach young people or students a language, like I've said before, with these discrete grammatical concepts. We have to teach a language like a real life example. It needs to reflect the real world. So in the real world, we have this interleaving in conversations. You'll hear, as I've spoken just in this short amount of time, I will have used multiple grammatical concepts. I will have used the past tense, the present tense, the future tense. I will have used prepositions. I'll have used conjunctions. We can't possibly expect a student to remember and is able to speak in a confident and fluent way if they only learn something in an isolated way. So that's something that's really, really important. So looking at science and looking at reflective of real life, so interleaving, using all of these combinations of grammar. And then the other thing that's really important, and as Anuradha ma'am, you said before about our students, our children, they're not speaking, they're not putting themselves forward. We aren't giving children the framework to become confident speakers, because we are saying, okay, who wants to go first? Who wants to have a go? And then, as you say, the people who have already got that language acquisition or that confidence or that knowledge already, they will put themselves forward. And then the more that they're able to practice that, they become better and better. And then what happens, the gap between the most successful and the most confident speakers gets much, much bigger, because those children have the opportunity to practice it continually. But also, we're not giving the students who don't have that knowledge at the beginning, we're not giving them the materials or the confidence to practice. So what we do at Queen's English is we use a direct instruction spoken English curriculum, whereby the teacher models full sentences. The children repeat those full sentences. And then if they get the pronunciation that's not accurate, or their confidence isn't very high, the teacher is able to correct them, and then they're able to do it again. And because they've got the tools to succeed already, they become much more confident, because they're not having to find the words for themselves. They being given fully formed sentences, modeled expertly, and then they're given a safe environment to practice. And then they build up that functional fluency over time. They're building it up in a real life way, rather than we're going to teach you how to break down the verb to have, and then hopefully you'll be able to have a confident and fluent conversation with an English person. You won't be able to do that. I learned French for 7 years in school, and I could definitely break down the verb to have, but I wouldn't be able to speak a full conversation with a French person, because I haven't been given fully formed sentences, the opportunity to practice, be corrected, and hear it modeled expertly. So that's my That's my thoughts on the issue, how we solve it, and why it's important.
Thank you, Charlotte. Indeed, insightful. Actually, I think who doesn't know that all of us have learned our mother tongue just by listening, And, like we know that a child born to any mother and placed in another environment, and the child starts speaking that language purely by listening to that language and then start speaking. So it is about modeling, having a safe environment to talk to, and providing opportunities to speak, right? And where safely. And then the last, most important part is speaking in context. Yeah. So when we don't speak in context, is like what you said about your French, that you know the grammatical aspects of the French language, but when it comes to actually speaking it, you don't know. We can't actually learn a language simply with rules. So you can't stop to think of that rule before speaking. Yeah. So it has to come so naturally, and that will only come if you are provided with opportunities to speak. And so I think I've seen the program, and how they do it is like every child feels empowered to speak, and the speaking then comes naturally. And like you said, a very small percentage of our country is doesn't speak English. We have our constitution has 22 vernacular languages, actually. And so everybody might not be very fluent in English, but so everybody doesn't feel the need for English actually to move forward, and that's fair enough. So you will find a lot of people very fluent and very good with their own vernacular language. But I'm saying, if we want to aspire to learn English, you should learn it all correct and from the right people. Yeah. Thank you so much, Charlotte. It was a pleasure, and we will move forward. We are already running short of time, but we will still, I don't want to miss out on any panelist. Our next panelist is Piyu Mukherjee. She's heading learning and development at Prospecta Software. She's with us as a mother of 2 teenage children poised to enter higher education. She's a parent with a firm belief in the concepts of lateral thinking and freedom of choice in education. I think that's the most important thing for a parent to do, is allow children the choice. Now, my question to you, Piyu, is that we need to teach our children, one of the human skills that we need to have is about being true to self, being true to yourself, know your strengths and weaknesses. So don't live in a false world that this is true for everybody. Companies also feel we are the best, we are doing the best. Schools feel we are the best, we are doing the best in everything. So similarly, parents feel the same for the children. My child is the best. My child knows the best. So how important it is to be true to yourself, to know your strengths and weaknesses, learn from challenges, work on the weaknesses, and move on. And I think parent plays a very, very crucial role in bringing this out in their children, their strengths and weaknesses. Over to Piyu.
Thank you so much, Anuradha ma'am. Warm greetings to all my co-panelists. It has been a pleasure listening to all the speakers before me. And thank you for the opportunity given today to allow me to speak on this. I hope I am audible and clear.
Yes, you are. Very clear.
Thank you so much. So I'm here as a parent today, and I would say that, I would begin by saying that I'm very agile when it comes to parenting. I became a parent when I became a mother, right? I have started learning parenting while my children have grown up. So it doesn't come with a set of rules which I need to follow to bring my kids up. So I'm learning on the go. And I think here today in this webinar, considering that we are talking about future jobs and the skills that are required for children to succeed in the future, it is something that is unknown to me as a parent. I can only equip my child with skills so that they are able to acclimatize themselves well, they are able to evolve and adapt and, exist in whatever comes in the future. I myself am not where I would have imagined myself to be when I started out as a young, when I started out from school, let's say, or I had no idea where I would land up. And I think that it would be very wrong of me to expect that my child would have clarity and I would have clarity as a parent that where the child is going to be in 10 years time, in 15 years time. I really do not know what the world is going to look like. What I can do here as a parent is I can arm myself and I can equip my child to be future ready with the skills to accept whatever is going to come our way, to have an open mind, to be very, very mindful of the trends that are, happening around us, what the environment is telling us, a social environment, natural environment, what are the changes that are coming, and make ourselves so agile, so nimble that we are able to accommodate ourselves into the change and become a part of the change that is going to come through. And that's the only way in which I can prepare my child. My younger child spends ample amount of time gaming, and there is a huge debate in the house whether I should allow him to be on the gaming platform for so long. But I really do not understand gaming. I don't play any of the video games that he does, but he does. He understands that. And maybe that is a skill that he requires, and maybe that is a skill that will equip him further for his jobs. I do not know that. And I have to keep an open mind as a parent to allow him to explore, and to not at the cost of his studies. I acknowledge that as well, but I have to make sure that I allow him that freedom to make his mistakes and learn from those mistakes and then rise again. So we become very, very protective of our children, and we don't allow them the freedom of decision making. Being the elder ones in the family, we assume that we are the ones who are going to lead the family and take the decisions. But as Ms. Bhakuni had mentioned, a leader has to make oneself redundant. So I have to make myself redundant in my child's life as a parent. I have to allow my child to grow and allow my child to flower on his own. So I, just leave you with this thought that as a parent, I feel that we need to be more agile and ready to learn, and sort of be with our children, hold their hands as they are growing, rather than trying to impose anything on them. I don't think that will get us anywhere in the future. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, PU ma'am. It was indeed, I think all the parents listening to this would empathize and will connect with what you are saying. And we as parents have a tendency to overprotect our children. But yeah, good parent is actually all the time, like you said, is agile. Okay, that yes, we need to protect, we need to let our children know that we are there. But we need to allow them to go out and learn, make their mistakes, come back. And if they know that there is somebody there who will accept me, even if I made that mistake, that's the great learning for future. And you rightly said, we don't know of the jobs of the future, and that's how I started. So the jobs which we read about or think about are some things which are we are imagining basis what is there. But what we can do is make them to be cognitive. Adaptability is one thing which they have to learn. They have to learn resilience, and they have to be equipped with the human skills so that they are able to handle the machine perfectly and be happy with it. Thank you. And you will be very delighted. I don't think you know that the next speaker that we have will answer a lot of questions about your son. Okay, so you will be very happy to listen to him. So we have with us, so now again thinking about these things, we know many a times what happens that parenting, like you said, I am only so many years old as a parent. You said I became a parent only when I became a mother.
That's
Right?
right.
Yeah. So all of us do that, and there is no qualification we have to enter into this domain. You become a parent, and you should be knowing all about parenting, but it doesn't really happen. And then we make our hits and trials and all that, and we keep on doing that. So many a times you will find that children really don't know what they have to do. And it's right, it's fine that they have to explore and know, but they have to know themselves. They need to know their strengths and weaknesses, and who we have to guide them to know themselves. So we should have a plan, we should have a curriculum which actually does that. So we have tried to put some of those elements also into our plan of things called emotional intelligence, knowing self and knowing others, right? So that you actually emerge out beautifully. So now, thank you very much, Piyu. Very well said. And let's move on to see, like you said, that my son, you said that your son uh, likes to be on the gaming platform all the time. And you wonder what's happening. So I think I need not introduce our next panelist, Digvijay, who is, I will just read out about him and let him talk about emotional intelligence, learn to explore self, found out about jobs that match your personality, talk to industry expert, and develop your portfolio for college admissions, right, with experts. Okay, next. Digvijay Singh is an alumnus of Sri Ram School, Aravali. He has completed his BTech in computer science and has interned with I don't know how do you say it. Is it
CERN.
CERN? Okay,
Yeah.
CERN, Switzerland, and QA Infotech, and is it ILI?
Eli, yeah.
LI. Okay, he's now working towards carving a path in an unusual profession as a gamer.
Right.
Yeah, and I think you did not know about this. And I am so glad that you are here with us. And the reason why I want you to be here and to speak to everybody here, parents and teachers alike, is like today it is not about what parents think that children should do. And it's not about taking up a career which is well paying and secure. It's about what makes me happy. It must have been a tough choice for you, not so much for you, but I think I should sometimes meet your parents and talk to them about it. But yeah, but what made you? My question is, when did you realize that what is gaming, first of all? Yeah, what is this profession as a gamer? I don't think most of the people here in our webinar today would know about it. Tell them very briefly about what it is. When did you decide to do this? Right? And what are the hurdles that you faced?
Absolutely.
Over to
So
you,
first,
Vijay.
thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you for having me here. I mean, having me here just shows how much I would say Indian education system is evolving. So, like when I was in school, I would not expect I don't know, a pink hair colored guy to be called to a school for a speech or anything. So, yeah. So I would like to say I would like to thank you guys for that, for having me here, and. So yeah, the journey, like you said, it would be tough for my parents. So the thing was, yeah, the reason it was tough for them was to accept that the world is changing. So it's different for them. Like the difficulty is different for them and different for me. For me, it was to it was basically everybody telling me how this is not the place to be, and how I was supposed to just believe in myself and think that someday it's going to yield. So yeah. So basically, I was when I was in my school, I was a maths person. So I was into maths and physics. I was good at that, and so I tried to focus on studies. I could not a lot. So I used to pass my exams. I used to make it through to the next grade, and yeah, that's basically what I did till around ninth grade, 10th grade, and then I tried to improve. I went down again. Then in 12th I went up during the board times. So my studies were very turbulent, I would say. So for sometimes I was good, sometimes I was bad, sometimes I was very bad. So yeah, and during all this time, the one thing that did not stop was me playing. Didn't have to be video games. I used to play 2 hours of football every day. I used to go for my guitar classes. It wasn't that I wasn't doing anything. If I wasn't studying, I was doing other things I was interested in, and yeah, I used to game a lot. So I used to spend a lot of time on video games, and the thing that PU ma'am said about I like very much that she said that she does not understand gaming. So it was very well put, I would say. Like she didn't say anything against it or how it could be a waste of time. She just posed it as an interrogatory thing that I don't understand it. So yeah, so the thing was that I never gamed to get into it professionally. It was just something that I could just sit at and be on the computer for like hours. And the time did not matter to me. Then I could be at it for 2 hours. There were times when I was a kid, I was on a laptop for 10 hours. So like when I was a kid, that was a very large amount of time. Like when I'm trying to make it my job, it's very different. So sitting on the computer for 10, 12 hours a day wouldn't matter to me right now, right? But when I was a kid, when I was supposed to be studying, sitting on a laptop for 10 hours was a lot of time. So yeah. So this is how it started. So I used to game sometimes, and then I would I would like to cut the story short, and basically during the quarantine times, I was back to my I had got a lot of time to focus on gaming, right? So I realized that I'm spending a lot of time on it, and I'm getting really good at it. So as you said that you don't understand it, I would like to explain it to you a bit. So professional gaming is not normal video gaming, like you just sit down and with a controller, or you sit down on a computer and you just spend time to just enjoy. So professional gaming is not always enjoyable. It's like a regular job. So it's not necessarily enjoyable, right? Offer all that. Like if you do something 12 hours a day, it's not necessary that you're enjoying every second of it. I could be enjoying like half of it, but the rest of the time it's going to be. It's not like it's bad for me. It's just pressurizing. So I'm supposed, like everybody is required to perform at their jobs, at their workplaces. I am required to perform here, and the performance pressure is big because as compared to workplaces, like there's a lot of people at workplaces, right? So there are a lot of people working in a particular company, so you can get help from your colleagues. You can do various things. Over here, I'm supposed to have my individual skill and that only. So if anybody around me notices that I'm not performing up to the mark, so I will be called out for it, and it's not something that I can hide from everybody, right? So it's tough, and it's honestly in not only in India, everywhere, but I would like to talk about India. It's very hard to become a professional gamer per se, because whenever you say professional, you include money in it, right? So you have to whatever you're doing, if you're earning money, then only you can call yourself professional. Or if you're not only earning money, you have to be at a high level at it, right? So I would say I can be like, I'm pretty sure there are some students over here, so I could be very honest. I would tell you I'm not earning money through gaming right now. So that's a major thing that I learned, that you like anybody who wants, it's not only about gaming, right? It's about all the professions which are off road, I would say. So you need a backup plan in India, especially. So if I want to pursue if I want to pursue gaming as a professional, thing, then I have to have a backup. So I have to figure it out, right? I have to get a job where I can make it work. So where I'm doing the job, and it doesn't drain me out, and I can focus on gaming as well. So I have to figure that out for myself. That's a challenge for me, and I have to face it, because I'm trying to do something which is not uh, directly on the map, right? So I have to figure out something for myself. And anybody who wants to pursue this, like for example, Pio ma'am is talking about her child, right? So it's not necessary that that person wants to be a professional gamer. He could just be enjoying himself at it, which is not a bad thing also. So as long as there's a healthy balance, even if you want to become professional at something that is not directly on the map, even if you want to do that, there has to be healthy balance in which we have to realize the reality of life, right? The reality of society, I would say, not life. So we need a backup plan till we can make the dream or something work. So yeah, so I am working on my backup plan. I'm just graduating college. I'm trying to get myself a job. So I wouldn't like to discourage anybody by saying that this is not possible. It is very possible. Doing anything that you like is very possible. But if it's something that doesn't bring you money instantly, so you have to have a backup plan. There is something that you need to keep. There's something you need to do to achieve your goal, which is on a different path. So I would say that. And yeah, and I would say that it was hard for me to have a healthy balance. Like there's a like people are getting aware of mental health, right, these days. So people are talking a lot about mental health. So if you spend a lot of time, if I, like for example, me, I spent a lot of time gaming, right? And there are some times when I think that I'm doing something, I'm putting a lot. See, I have at least a few thousand hours in on the PC, at least 3 to 4 thousand hours in the last 2 years, and that's a lot of time. So I've spent a lot of time in building this skill. So I have reason to say that I'm good at what I do, but that's all I have right now. So it does sometimes, when I'm not feeling very nice, when I'm not feeling very confident, then it can bring me down. I can think that I'm not getting anywhere, and that's only on the, I would say, on money terms, right? I'm not getting anywhere because I'm not earning anything. I don't have anything to show. There's nothing I can say it, like if someone comes over to my house, what does a kid do? I can't say anything, because I mean, I can stand up for myself, but I can't, like, if they ask, oh, do you earn a lot in that or whatever, what is the thing? Because this is India, let's be honest, everybody will ask that. And it's not that I care about it, it's just that it can affect anybody. So I have grown to a point where it doesn't affect me, but it used to. So I would say that if anybody is thinking of pursuing something like this, then they have to be aware of the challenges, and it is going to affect them in many ways, and they just have to go through with it. And I think I would like to say that you just have to bring yourself up. If like, there will be a lot of times when society will bring you down, even if they're not physically doing it, even if someone is not physically telling you, but everybody has conceptions about society. So like, it can affect anybody. So I would just say that you have to be confident, you have to believe in yourself, I would say. Yeah, and it will take time. I think Sayud sir is over here. He's an entrepreneur, right? So I'm in gaming, so I would say that it would not be very different for him, because he has to, till his business or till whatever his startup is, till it works, he has to believe in himself, and he has to think that it is going to, I am going to make this work. Even if everybody tells me you're going through losses right now, you're going to be going through losses for the next 3 years, it's going to work someday. I have to make it work, right? So I think that should be said for everybody, for every profession, and especially all professions which are off road. So I would say, like, if there are any students over here, I would say that this is a very good private school, right? Millennium School, or everybody who is over here who has the opportunity to attend this webinar is probably from at least a decent middle class household. You are going to get a job. You are going to get decent grades. You are going to get a college. You will get a job ultimately. There's no chance that you will not get a job. You will do something in the world. So that is not a problem. But figuring out what you like, what you love to do, and then making a profession out of it in a healthy way, is a thing that you should focus on, because I mean you're going to be doing it for at least 1/3 of your day, and it does matter. And it's better that you start to figure it right now, and don't waste like half your life. You reach 40 or 50 and then you realize, oh shit, I'm at the wrong place, I'm doing the wrong thing, I should be doing something else. That's not a bad thing. You can realize it later also, but that's not, I'm just saying, if you're listening to this, then I think you should start figuring it out right now about like what you like, what are your passions, and balance it out in a healthy way.
Great.
That's
Thank
what
you so much, Digvijay. I think the greatest learning for anybody in this webinar has come from you. I think
That's a
you
lot to
have
say.
really
Thank you.
taught us a lot. So, being persistent and convinced about what I like to do and going after it, and making sure that you're at it, admitting that yes, it's not giving me money now, but this is what I like to do, and it will take me there, and following it. And with so much confidence to walk a path which very few people have walked.
Yeah.
And congratulations to you, and wishing you a lot of power. And I hope you get your path, and we'll call you again and again to motivate our students. Whenever we are addressing our students, I think you should definitely come and talk to them, because whatever they do, our next speaker is Sayuj. Sayuj Golcha is again a young entrepreneur. So when we spoke about our first speaker, Ms. Bakuni, and then later Mr. Shah also spoke about being resilient and to be able to, the skills to be able to stand up after something doesn't work, okay, is an important skill. But there are two ways of learning it. You could learn it after you have been in that situation, right? Sometimes that's the best learning. Most of the time, it's the best learning. But if we are talking about preparing our children for the future, just like speaking that, okay, it doesn't matter, things will change and it'll work for you, be after it and do all that, it actually doesn't have meaning. So we invited Sayuj Golcha. He's an entrepreneur. Why? Because we wanted to see from him. He could have also got a job with the kind of background that he has. I'll just share his profile and then we'll move on. And thank you so much, Digvijay. Sayuj, a young and dynamic entrepreneur. He is multifaceted personality and an alumnus of SRCC and Carnegie Mellon University. He holds extensive understanding in the finance and education sector. So again, he has a background, like you said, that people in this webinar, like Digvijay said, people in this webinar are all from middle class or higher families, and they will all get a job. But the point is, whether are you working and are you doing something which you like to do? Because 1/3 of your day you are doing that. Yeah. So we would like to ask Sayuj over here that, Sayuj, tell me what took you to this path. You could have definitely got a very good job. And finance, you have majored in finance. You could have got a good job as an investment banker or something like the flashy titles that we know of. But you decided to go on and walk on a path and start from the scratch. Tell me why you did that. And do you think schools should also focus on entrepreneur mindset?
So thank you so much for the introduction, Anuradha ma'am, and thank you to all the panelists for coming here and expressing their views. And thank you for having me here. First of all, it's a real pleasure to be here among such accomplished people. So, ma'am, to answer your question, I somewhere down the line, I knew there was my calling to, create things, to solve problems, to find a better solution to problems. And but nothing is served up to you on a silver plate and handed to you right there. So I knew that I have to stress that while you know that and you know what you want to do, it's very important to have the right guidance at the right time, have the right exposure, go through the right set of experiences before you can dive into something like that, rather than just diving into it straight away. So I've had, I've studied economics, I've studied finance, I've studied data analytics. I've worked in multiple sectors. I worked in investment banking. online education, financial markets, investing, trading across multiple roles before, even thinking that, I'm ready for taking up something like this. So, and I've been fortunate that I've had the right guidance at the right time, be it from my parents, be it from my teachers, but all of the important personalities in my life. So I've been very fortunate that way. So to answer your question, I think first of all, an entrepreneurial mindset is basically a way of thinking in some ways that enables you to overcome challenges, to be decisive, and to accept responsibility for your actions. So it's a constant need to improve your skills, to hone your skills, to learn from your mistakes, to take action on your ideas. And as I said, at its very core, I think being an entrepreneur means being passionate about solving problems and being able to identify problems in your day-to-day life, finding solutions which are more optimal than any other solutions in existence. So most importantly, I think an entrepreneur must be decisive, because it's very important to be decisive and have clarity of thought, because you'll be faced with a lot of split-second decisions that you'll have to make in the day. And I think to start that, I mean, it could be something as small as, going to a restaurant, seeing the menu, and you should be able to decide what you want to order instead of dallying over, flipping the pages again and again and thinking about what you want to have. So starting from something as simple, but I think being decisive and having that clarity of thought, having critical thinking and logical reasoning abilities so that you can analyze all data related to a problem, understand it from different perspectives, and act on it. So I feel that's very important. And I think some of the people here have also spoken that it's also very important to be resilient, to be mentally strong. So there'll be a lot of failures, a lot of setbacks that you'll face from time to time. And I mean, from my own example, so when I started out working straight after college, and I was working for an investment fund, and I read some numbers wrong. I recommended an investment strategy on the basis of that, and it went completely south. So, I mean, it was a huge setback for me at the time. It was something that made me question my abilities, but I learned from those mistakes. I came back after my master's, and I designed an algorithm which now has, which an investment fund is using, and it has laid the foundation for $150 million fund. So I think the key is that I've had way more failures in my life than successes, but I've learned to be mentally strong. I've learned to be resilient, that no matter what, I'll be able to overcome this. And I had that confidence in my abilities. So that is also very important, I think, to have that confidence in your abilities. But because I feel that I see a lot of people having that talent and having that ability, but it is their self-doubt ultimately which kills their dreams and kills their ambitions. So I would personally, I think, as I said, I've wanted to make an impact and, do something that changes lives of people around me for the better by creating new things and finding solutions to problems. But again, it's not a straightforward journey. And I mean, if I talk from my personal experience as a child, I never had the confidence or belief to pursue my dreams. I was a very bright student. I was always scoring decent marks, but I was quite an introvert. I didn't have the ability to articulate my thoughts. I was hesitant in talking to people and expressing myself. And coming from a conservative background, my parents were satisfied that I was doing reasonably well in academics and didn't really realize that, I was facing these problems. So as I said, I was very fortunate to have the right guidance at the right time. And I owe a huge debt of gratitude to some of my school teachers, especially my 8th grade English teacher, Miss Kavita Kumar. I think she was the one who sort of identified that I'm not maximizing my potential and had a word with my parents on how to change that. My parents also then, they put me into the best public speaking classes out there. And to remove that fear and hesitation that had crept up inside of me, they encouraged me to pursue my passions such as football and music. And gradually, I started participating in more debates. I started participating in Model United Nations, performing on the stage, performing in concerts. And it just, I grew from strength to strength from there. I mean, my confidence started growing. And surprisingly, as a result, I mean, I started scoring way better marks in my academics than I was before. So I went, from 80% in class 8 to 93% in class 10 and 98% in class 12 without, putting in any additional effort, just as a result of that confidence and that belief I had. So I realized that, it permeates and sort of has a knock-on effect onto all aspects of our life. So I think we've spoken a lot about our education system and how we place a huge importance in academics, and rightly so, because knowledge is what empowers us. But I've also come to realize that we need to give our students the right set of tools to make use of that knowledge in the real world, because sometimes there are so many aspects to our all-round development that for any child, no matter how bright, no matter how confident and how well developed, certain aspects of that all-round development can remain neglected without us realizing it until it's too late. So developing those aspects can, have a positive knock-on effect, as I've seen, on all parts of our life, be it our exam scores, be it our personal life and relationships, our mental resilience and fortitude, and so on. So ultimately, I feel that, no matter what a student's career aspirations and ambitions, and no matter what his existing skill sets, it's very important for anyone to develop and hone these skills, such as problem solving, such as logical thinking, communication, leadership, emotional intelligence. So because these will help, no matter what a child goes on to do in the future, they'll help you be the best version of yourselves in all walks of life. And so finally, I think to conclude, I'd just like to say, during the course of this webinar and before having interacted with some of you guys, I think this is, you guys are bringing forward a fantastic initiative with Millennium One, giving children the opportunity to hone a plethora of such crucial life skills hand in hand with the best of academics. And I feel that this mission will add tremendous value to the lives of parents and children across the country. So I really appreciate having the opportunity to be part of this discussion. Thank you so much, everyone, and wish everyone all the best for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Sayoj. And it's great to see a young person like you. There's so many people clapping for you. And seeing somebody young who has decided to move on and make something different, do something different. And like you said rightfully, I made mistakes.
Yeah.
And then you overcome those, and that learning is going on in your life, and you are at it. So like Digvijay says that this is my passion and I'm for it and I'm going to pursue it and achieve what I want to. And that same passion is driving you as well. And I'm glad that you are here, and parents and teachers and all educators over here would agree with every point that you have said. And it's time for us adults to introspect and think what we were doing is right, or we need to rethink about what is to be done. Thank you very much, Sayoj. And I think we have a feedback form in the chat box, which you can fill in, participants can fill in. Sayoj spoke about entrepreneur's mindset, and actually it is very important. So how, like I said, how does that set in? So do we do a project? Do we go out and actually create something new? And sometimes it's very good to talk about things, but when you actually get down to doing things is when you realize that, no, I'm not so good at it. And then how do I get good at it? I have to learn that skill, or I have to try some things differently and make that work. So there'll be failures and there'll be successes. And actually, one small success is addictive. You succeed and you want to do more and more. So if you are in an environment which allows you to work on different kinds of real-time projects, it helps to build all the skills clubbed in one. So our attempt over here, and thank you, Sayoj. I had spoken to him about what we do at Millennium One, and thank you for saying that it it works. So we focus on both academic skills and non-academic skills. We talk about it's the creative skills that also we focus on. Like if you have a passion in dance, music, theater, so you actually should continue your passion and it should not stop you from doing anything. And so rightly, like you said, that you started performing better after doing whatever classes that you were doing. Digvijay said that he was continuing to do his guitar classes and his football. He used to go and play for 2 hours or something like that. He continued to pursue his passion areas, and that we should. And parents, all the parents listening to it, should actually keep this in mind for the betterment of their children. Thank you so much. You could fill the feedback form, and if you want to reach us, you could reach us at millennium1.in. And thank you once again, all the panelists, and Mrs. Bhakuni and Mr. Shah. If you want to add just one last line in the whole thing, we'll be happy to hear from you, because you were the first ones to speak.
I'll give that chance to Rajan first.
No, I thank you so much. It was a good, insightful view from our young panelists. Good to hear. And all I can say is, right, all in all, a very good learning experience for all of us. Thank you.
Truly, thank you, Mrs. Bhakuni.
I think I've learned a lot today.
Absolutely, you are very right.
The youngsters have so much to teach us.
Correct.
And we are so lucky, Anuradha, you and I, and so many of us, we are so lucky that we have been with the youngsters forever, all our lives. So we're not going to age ever.
Absolutely.
Like those eagles that keep reinventing themselves, and these kids are going to help us. Thank you, Sayuj, and thank you, Digvijay. For the amazing insights. And because, we are the link. You people kind of guide us, and then we who are working in this arena of education for small children and, youngsters, we become better versions, and we are able to, help children better when we stay connected with the youngsters like you. So thank you for all the insights. I feel very privileged to have heard both of you.
Yeah, same here. And we did overshoot our time limit, but I think they were the last speakers, and I think everybody would have been like glued to it and got something tremendous from both of you. And thank you. Your insights were also brilliant. Charlotte, thank you for joining us and giving us those insights about the language. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.